Hi, I'm Darleen Pryds. Today I've been asked to talk to you about vulnerability and the gift of dependence, but I'm going to tweak that a little bit. I want to talk about vulnerability and the gift of interdependence. And the reason is because of my own personal story, so let me start there. When I was a young child, my grandmother came to live with us after Grandpa died. I was about 4 years old, and I didn't really understand everything that was going on, but I really did enjoy having Grandma around all the time. She taught me how to bake cookies. We watched Jack LaLanne together in the morning, and we worked out. Well, sort of. And just as often, we talked to each other about God. As a 4-year-old, my understanding of God was in the person of Jesus. He was someone who cared about children. For my grandmother, Jesus was someone who stayed with her when she felt alone. Now, looking back on those conversations, I realized she was teaching me about compassion, about being with suffering. She was suffering during those early months of widowhood, and she taught me how to bear witness to that suffering, how to be present with her, to notice and acknowledge her sadness, and to stay with her. You might think that this was a heavy challenge for a 4-year-old, but for me, I loved being with my grandmother. And I wanted to be with her, even with her suffering. Now, later in my teen years, she came to live with us again after her left leg was amputated because of complications of diabetes. Again, I learned to sit with her, sometimes helping her, caring for her amputated limb, but more often just sitting with her, watching her favorite soap opera, As the World Turns, until she started to share what was really on her mind and on her heart. These were not easy years for my grandmother. There was physical loss after physical loss. We might call these diminishment after diminishment. But during those years, I learned so much from my grandmother about faith, perseverance, love, and most of all, trust in the divine spirit. Now, before you assume her faith was a simple one, let me set you straight. Like many of us, as she experienced loss of relationships through death and loss of physical capacity through amputation and aging, she could express a wide range of emotions, ranging from curiosity to despair, wonder to malaise. By the time I was a young adult in my 20s, I had heard my grandmother say more than once, "I don't want to be a burden to anyone. I'm of no use to anyone. Why doesn't God just take me?" Now, of course, I never felt she was a burden, nor did my family. But now, many years later, I've heard many people in the hospices where I have served utter similar statements and questions. Maybe you've heard a similar response from someone close to you. All I can say as a long-lived adult at this point, these experiences with my grandmother and now with so many other people that I have encountered in hospice where I serve as a volunteer caregiver, these experiences have taught me more about faith and spirituality than any book, than any sermon, than any doctrine. Now, I've started this reflection with a very personal story, since these experiences of my own help me flesh out the stories of caregiving and care receiving from our Franciscan tradition. It's likely that any of us who's steeped in this tradition have read or preached on or even taught some of these stories. We know that both Francis and Clare included in their rules or their form of life provision for the vowed members to care for one another. Already in Francis's first rule that dates around 1209, 1210, the expectation that brothers would care for one another is present. Chapter 10, he writes, "If any of the brothers fall sick, wherever he may be, let the other brothers not leave him behind, or at least allow one or several, if necessary, be designated to care for them." Now, it's equally notable that he also included a directive to the brothers who were sick. "I beg the sick brothers to thank God for everything and to desire to be whatever the Lord wills, whether sick or well." In other words, no complaining. These stipulations are found slightly altered in the later rule, when in 1223 Francis writes, when any brother falls sick, the other brothers must serve him as they would wish to have been served. And it's noteworthy that caregiving and care receiving are to be like the kind of care that we find within a family. Wherever the brothers may be and meet one another, let them show that they are members of the same family. Let each one confidently make known his need to the other. For if a mother loves and cares for her son according to the flesh, how much more diligently must someone love and care for his brother according to the Spirit? Similar directives are found in Clare's Form of Life. So we know that Clare and Francis wanted to make sure that the sisters and the brothers cared for one another. In addition, the brothers and sisters should not hold back from making their needs known. Clare wrote, "Let each confidently make her own needs known to one another. For if a mother loves and cares for her child according to the flesh, how much more attentively should a sister love and care for her sister according to the Spirit?" Now, these are the directives, yet we know that it's one thing to be told to act in a certain way, and another to actually live according to it. Francis himself put off treatments for his eye condition despite his brother's urging for him to seek medical care. And we know that he could be cranky and petulant when he was ill, a little bit like many of us. Some emotions can get stirred up when we feel vulnerable, when we have lost the capacity for some of the activities or even the basic ways of being. For Francis, that was losing his sight, which was accompanied by chronic pain. As we know from medical studies today, and perhaps from our own experiences of chronic pain, it's tiring, it wears on us, and it adds to our sense of vulnerability. For many of us, especially those of us who have led a life in ministry, we might be more comfortable serving others than receiving support from others. But as Franciscans, when we live into the vulnerability of being dependent on others, we open ourselves up to an even more meaningful relationship with those who care for us and with that deeper faith. In short, our dependence makes us interdependent. Rachel Naomi Raymond explains this distinction in this way. She distinguishes between helping, fixing, and serving. Helping, she says, is based on inequality. It's not based on a relationship of equals. Instead, when we help someone, we draw on those skills and capacities that we have that are stronger than the person that we're helping. So it follows that the person being helped can feel that inequality and may experience some sense of shame or inadequacy. When someone tries to fix a situation, they are judging the person or the situation as broken. This judgment creates distance and enforces a sense of inequality. But serving is different according to Raymond. Serving comes from a place of mutual respect and is itself mutual. Serving comes from a place of wholeness, so that one serves with one's whole self, including our wounds, including our vulnerability. She writes, "When you help, you see life as weak. When you fix, you see life as broken. And when you serve, you see life as whole." Unquote. This allows the person being served to serve in return. This leads to mutual gratitude for the presents being offered one another. After encountering Raymond's model of serving, I reflected on how much I had learned and grew from serving my grandmother as a child and then again as a teen. It's only then that I understood the significance of our shared Franciscan experience of vulnerability and interdependence. I think the story that best illustrates this is that of Francis and the leper. This well-known encounter that Francis opened his testament with had for years been for me, a story of conversion to caregiving, just caregiving. I had only seen or considered how Francis had changed in his attitude and capacity to be present with lepers and to care for them. In many images of this encounter, we see them positioned with Francis higher than the leper, perhaps with Francis helping the leper, or even trying to fix the leper's situation. But in one image, we see the two looking at each other eye to eye on equal footing. Here we see the mutuality of serving that is fundamental to Franciscan spirituality. Our respective vulnerabilities, and we all have them, make us not just dependent, but interdependent. We need one another, and we serve one another, even in our physical weaknesses. Now, for you to go deeper here and to consider how all of this applies to you personally, I'd like to close with a couple of questions for you to consider. First, how do you feel when you're receiving care from a professional caregiver, a family member, or a vowed brother or sister in your community? Do you have a sense of mutuality in the experience? In what ways are you vulnerable? Does vulnerability lead to trust of those around you? Or do you find you want to go it alone, so to speak? Do you feel dependent on others? Or do you have a sense of living interdependent with those around you? And finally, where do you feel gratitude in the relationships you have? Peace and all good.